This podcast is brought to you by She's Next by Visa. As a female entrepreneur, you face unique challenges from access to funding and mentorship to navigating male-dominated industries. It can be really hard to break through. She's Next 2023 offers educational programs, mentorships, and funding opportunities, all designed to help women entrepreneurs like you succeed. Find out more in the show's description or by simply Googling She's Next by Visa.
One of the big questions that kept coming up from the rank and file at Kareem and also people outside of Kareem is how longer are the founders still here?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a perception that these guys have an earnout, and as soon as that earnout is finished, they will leave. And we kept telling people that, look, this purpose of Kareem, remember, that we talked about in chapter 1, simplify the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. We are extremely early in this purpose. There are 500 million people that live between Morocco and Pakistan. And when the deal had happened, I think our monthly active users was 5 million. So out of the 500 million people, we're only simplifying the lives of 5 million on a monthly basis, which means that there is at least 100x more people that we should be helping.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 55 of Conversations with Loulou. My guest is Mudassir Sheikha, the co-founder and CEO of Kareem, one of the biggest success stories in the region to date. The UAE-born ride-hailing company was sold to Uber in 2020 for $3.1 billion. But not one to rest on his laurels, Mudassir and his co-founders Magnus and Abdullah have recently announced a new spin-off, Careem Technologies. This is the company that will build the Everything app, a new super app that will have many verticals in addition to ride-hailing. And they've also secured fresh funding of $400 million from E&, which is formerly Etisalat. In this conversation, we're going to be talking about what does it take to build a unicorn, especially in this part of the world, and what does it take to keep it going, and so much more. Let's tune in. And welcome to the show.
Well, pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to talk about the three different phases of Kareem. The phase 1, the startup, the underdog. The phase 2, which is the Uber, post-Uber acquisition, and phase 3, which is what you're building today, the super app. But before we talk about that, I just wanted to give the audience, a small glimpse about you. Not many people know you personally, right? So what we see about you is usually in the news or something like that. So what is it in your background that kind of drives this ambition that you have? Because entrepreneurship is hard, right? Failure rate is very high. If you work hard, it doesn't mean that you're going to succeed. But you've done it despite all odds. So what is it you think that kind of gives you that drive?
Yeah, look, I think all of us are a function of our backgrounds and experiences. So I think one thing that really probably helped looking backwards and connecting the dots was I grew up in a relatively humble background in Pakistan. My mom was actually a very good student, but she got married right after she graduated high school, so didn't really get the opportunity to pursue her ambition and passion. And I was born soon after, so all the sort of things that she was not able to accomplish herself, I felt got embedded deeply in me, and then my sister, and then my other sister as well. So for us, growing up, we had to be really good in studies. If we were not good in studies, we'd have consequences, and those consequences would often become aggressive and violent as well. So it felt bad at that time because growing up, it just felt more difficult than it had to be. But looking back, it really instilled some drive and some quest to do good from that side. And on my dad's side, he was came from a business family. His dad gave him and his brothers a very small business in Pakistan. So I saw the side of him trying to make ends meet as a small and medium business, and saw what entrepreneurship and being a small business owner looked like. So that's probably the second part of upbringing, seeing how these things get done, that probably came together at some shape or form.
So your mom was pushing you to be studious. Your dad, on the other hand, showed you the art of being a business owner. But you were not like, you're quite accomplished. I mean, I looked at your background. You went to the US. you studied in Ivy League universities. You know, you're not like you were at Stanford, you were in the Bay Area at times where a lot of exciting things were happening.
Yeah, so look, I got lucky because my grades were somewhat decent in school. So I got a scholarship to go to college. And
Okay.
that was a great break for me personally and for the family. But what was even luckier is to graduate almost at the height of the dot-com bubble. This was 99, 2000, when a lot of crazy and amazing things are happening. You see people around you who are as young as you, who look as you do, going out and building big businesses, raising a ton of money. There's absolutely no end to that ambition. It just gives you a lot more confidence that, look, if these people can do it, then I can as well. So it was actually quite a fortunate time to be graduating and being where I was in California, in the Bay Area, around the dot-com bubble. So I joined a couple of startups, but one of the startups that I joined had just raised $200 million in first round funding, which back then was a big amount as well. And their ambition was to go public in 9 months. And they said,
Wow.
we will quickly build a ton of scale and we'll go public and everyone's going to be rich and we'll go home. It really was a build to flip type of story. And of course, things didn't go as all of us had planned. The dot-com thing crashed, and many of us, we had some savings, and if anything, we actually put our savings into the startup as well to make the most bang for the buck, and that ended up in a spectacular disaster. But what I learned from that experience, being in that environment, was one, you should always take a very, very long-term view on things. You never know how the short-term is going to pan out, and build to last, and make sure that you put solid foundations for whatever you're doing in place. That's number one. Second, there was crazy ambition in that startup, and there was incredible speed, right? The way that things were being done. Even now, when I think of it, it gives me the chills, right? How quickly would you build scale and then plan to go public and do crazy things? Just gives you a sense of anything is possible, right? Like if you have the right ambition, if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to race ahead, then nothing is out of reach. And then it was a very humbling experience as well.
Why?
Because it didn't go as planned, right? Like in the end, the company.
So there was no exit before?
There was no exit. The company
Okay.
basically went bellies up. We
Oh,
were
right,
acquired for our losses, because in the US, of course, you have to pay taxes, and the losses that one company has can be tax breaks for the other. So it was a complete washout.
Okay.
And that was humbling.
And you
right?
you were an employee at the company?
I was
or
an
were
employee.
you-
I was employee number 11. So I was an
Okay.
early employee, had sleeping bags in the office, slept most days working late nights and waking up early in the morning. And then after doing all of this, it's not like you're walking away with something. You've actually put all your savings into that business as well, and
Yeah.
you've lost that. You feel like a bit of a failure.
Yeah.
It's quite a pivotal and learning moment for many
Yeah.
of us.
So it's interesting. So you learned, you got that culture, the grit, let's build something really big, let's sleep in the office, let's do whatever it takes to make it happen from your time in the Bay Area. Because this is not the norm here. I think, probably one of the biggest critiques you get at Careem is that people work really hard. But you've seen it there, right? And you've experienced it there in the Bay Area, and you kind of brought this culture back.
Yeah, look, I think that experience was definitely quite an instrumental experience. But look, it doesn't have to be that kind of experience, right?
Yeah.
People work at consulting companies, they work at investment banks, and they work really, really hard as
Yes.
well. And they do all of those things and maybe even more. And I personally feel that the first job or two that you do, they really shape you, right? And some of these companies, high intense startups, banks, consulting companies, they may seem hard, but they really instill that discipline of working hard and instill that grit and that resilience that is very important to accomplish anything in life. So, entrepreneurship, as you know, Loulou, is glamorized outside, but in
It's
the
really
kitchen,
hard.
it's a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
and day in and day out, and it doesn't end.
Yeah.
So if you get to practice that, and if you get to sort of live that, in the early stages of your life, then it really serves you well down the road.
Yeah. I've spoken to a few people that have worked in Careem, part of your alumni, and they said that, you know, it was hard, but they say like they have all positive things to say. Do you know what I mean? Like they say that it was so hard, but they said like it was transformational. Like they came out of it much stronger, much better, you know, but it wasn't easy. So that's kind of like the feedback that I got.
Yeah. I think there are two things
And
that
they're going
happen,
out
right?
building companies themselves.
Exactly, right? So, but there are two things that happen, right? The simple law of physics, right?
Yeah.
If you're working 16-hour days versus someone that is working 8-hour days, are you not going to learn twice as much as that person? If not twice, you're learning 1.5, 1.7, 1.8. There is that additional learning that's going to happen. Even if you're doing the same thing, you don't get much better at that thing than someone that is not working the same number of hours as you. And learning, like money, compounds, right? You know, something that you learn at the age of 22, by the time you're 30, that learning has led to other learnings, that has led to other learnings.
Yeah.
It really becomes a powerful force. So you have to believe that working hard early in life
Pays off.
gives you the learning that actually helps you be successful. And the second thing in the case of Kareem was, I think we got a bit lucky in the way that we sort of built the business. Kareem was very decentralized in chapter one. There was, we were operating in so many different countries, and the people that were running the countries were basically CEOs of their countries.
Yeah.
And they were doing things a lot of times and telling us what they have done.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of autonomy in all parts of Kareem. So the people that were working with us were not just working hard and getting a lot of the learning, but they were also experiencing a lot of autonomy. They were learning from their own mistakes. And after you go through that experience, you feel like you can do it, right?
Yeah.
Then why not do it on your own? Now, of course, once you do it on your own, you realize all the hidden things that you didn't see at Kareem because those were being done for you by others. But that's the next step of learning, right? You learn that, and then you become better and better and better.
Yeah, I had Chris Saeed on the podcast a while ago. He told me about the whole, you know, the stunt that he did with the
slingshot.
The slingshot. Yeah, and he said he told you like as he was about to do it. You know, he didn't talk to you about it before, or so it speaks to the autonomy that everybody had, by the way, which is great. And maybe that's why, again, going back to the feedback with some of the people I've spoke to, is that I think that's what made it hard, because the responsibility of making these decisions, it empowers you, but at the same time, it puts a lot of pressure on you, right? Because you have to make, like Kareem, in phase one, you had an existential threat, you had Uber, you had lots of these things. You didn't have a lot of funding initially as you were growing. So I think people felt the weight of that responsibility as well.
Yeah. There was one other thing that was driving and creating all of this passion, which was Kareem's purpose. You know, it's a gift that Kareem was born with. So 12 years ago, as you know, Magnus had a bleeding in his brain that almost took his life. And as part of the reflection going through that surgery, he promised himself that he'll build something big and meaningful. So pretty much in the first few days of Kareem, we came up with our purpose. From big and meaningful, it became simplify the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. And a lot of that translated into, we want to do something that's going to uplift the region. And that became a big source of inspiration for a lot of people that joined Kareem, and a lot of people that spent countless hours and spent all kinds of personal resources and comfort to make Kareem happen. I was in Saudi last week for our Saudi alumni reunion. And this was a story I heard from one of them. And there's like hundreds of stories like this.
Yeah.
The guy says on the second day of Kareem, our third co-founder, Abdullah Ilyas, comes and tells him, can we borrow 100,000 riyals from you? Because there are some captain sims that are about to go out of line if you don't pay, and we don't have the funds, or the funds will take some time to arrive from Dubai. Can we borrow money from you to actually pay their telecom bill? And this is nothing, right? There were people that were serving captains out of their living rooms, that there were people that were smuggling phones and getting caught at customs. It was just a passion, right? It was their thing. It was their mission to build something in the region that can uplift the region. And that's really what created a lot of pressure, a lot of passion, and a lot of the drive that ended up creating Kareem.
And I think your leadership as well. So one of the stories I heard is that some of the best moments that these guys had in the early days were when you used to sit in like a war room and your tech was failing and you could see that there is a customer waiting and like the car wasn't able to get to the customer and you actually were calling the captains and like giving them directions and you were there and everyone was there, like engineers, everyone was there basically making these calls and
Yeah.
uh,
What do you mean? Our tech never fails. Our tech is always solid. Uh,
yeah.
no, but I think this really came from Magnus. I think we have this value at Kareem now called every experience matters.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you build some scale, experiences become numbers. So you see a number, that number is looking 99.5%, and you start feeling good that this number is 99.5%, but you don't realize that at 0.5% at scale represents hundreds and thousands of customers who are actually having a bad experience because of some reason or the other. And Magnus was very particular about this and said, look, everything has to be reliable. Every customer touch point has to be dependable. So when we were not able to get you a car on a Thursday evening in Dubai, which was the Friday of today, we were literally calling people and saying, okay, we noticed that you made an attempt, you could not get a car. Let us try to manually call up some captains and try to get you a car. And we did it until some scale, which is quite surprising. And now when we look back at it, it feels extremely customer centric and something that we're trying to bring back at Kareem now, because the scale and the complexity is different. It's a little bit difficult to do, but if you really want to succeed long term, you have to be extremely customer centric and you have to build products and build a culture that delivers on that customer centricity.
That hands-on, basically, that hands-on culture. Everybody needs to chip in to make things work. You know,
100%.
there's also the culture, which is interesting. I remember because I'm an entrepreneur as well. I built a business here, and there were always people that would say, "Why would we use your business and not like the global competitor?" And I remember sometimes I used to go out with my friends and I would always use Kareem because obviously like I know the pain, right? And I know how important it is. And we would get into arguments about like they're using Uber. I would say, why are you not using the local player? And did you feel that culture initially that, that local products are, subpar? It's always the global players that have a better XYZ service product, so on.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being a loyal customer and advocate from the beginning.
From the get-go.
I heard one thing that really summarized what we saw in this competition with a global product. And someone said, you always overestimate a global competitor, a large global competitor, in the short term, and you underestimate them in the long term. Now, if you break it down, when that global competitor was just coming to the market, frankly, a lot of people at Kareem were terrified.
Yeah.
And some of us felt, because we had been in San Francisco, and frankly, Dubai is very, very far from San Francisco.
Yeah.
Not just from a distance standpoint, but in the way the city works and preferences of people. Quite an alarming situation. But we felt fine, they'll make an attempt, but they don't understand how this market works. We're on the ground. We'll be able to figure this out. But many people at Kareem who had not seen that, they were like, this company has much better technology. Their app actually looks very, very nice. We don't even have an app. They have raised a ton of money. They were calling all of our captains and telling them not to work with Kareem, and they were paying them fixed, guaranteed amount of money if they don't work with Kareem. So it really became quite aggressive very, very quickly. So initially, I think many of us maybe overestimated them, that they'll be able to make a big play and throw us out of the water. But what you realize is this market is different, right? Many of the things that work for Uber in their core markets did not work in Dubai and this region as well. For example, they would make it very easy for captains to cancel a ride. Whereas in this part of the world, we just didn't think that was a feature or empowerment that we had to give to captains. In Saudi, they were working with credit cards for the longest time, and many people were either not comfortable using credit cards or did not have a card. So we worked with cash, which became very complex to manage all of the cash that was being raised. Literally every day we had bags of cash from captains, and people were going to bank accounts to deposit that cash. But we did all of these difficult things that allowed the customers a service that was more tailored to their needs and their preferences, which was all things that they were learning, right? And getting better. But what you realize after a while is they learned these things. Just like we are building a better app and learning from them, they're learning all of these local things as well. And that's when they become a bigger threat. That's when their algorithms and data science and engineering starts really catching up on you. So in the early days, yes, we had to run a lot, and we were fighting for our survival. But there was always things that we were able to do that were local. We were able to do them fast and stay ahead of the competition.
Mm-hmm. So let's stick to the Careem 1.0 for a little bit. So how were you able to convince an investor to give you that first $1.7 million? Given all of that, I mean, what was your pitch?
So the first for 1.7, I didn't even know if Uber was in the picture. The term sheets and stuff were signed before sort of Uber showed up.
Before they announced, okay.
And the product was very different back then as well. It wasn't an on-demand service like it is today. It wasn't a B2C service like it is today. Our first version was a B2B service. Our clients were professional services organizations that had staff across the region. And we were just making it easy for them to be served in all of the different markets in a way that makes sense for these professional services organizations, in the sense that these organizations have people traveling, they put charge codes or case codes, those are getting billed to clients, the bookings are being made by their assistant or travel teams. There's a whole booking and expense management flow that we had built to serve these organizations. So that was Kareem's first version. That's the business that we raised the first round of funding on. And that's after that, I think Uber came to the market. You could argue what convinced someone to give you the second round of funding, because now Uber is in town.
Yeah. So the second one was 10 million, right?
The second one was 10 million. And that happened from a Saudi investor, Al Tayyar Travel Group. And that came on the back of us building scale in Saudi and showing that we are actually a much more local service and a better service for the Saudi market, because we were growing really fast in Saudi. And the competition wasn't doing very well because they were still working with credit cards, and they still hadn't figured out a lot of the local nuances on how to work with captains, what to give them, what not to give them, and so forth. So the second round happened because Saudi was really growing. And the third round became a little bit more challenging in the sense that now they've figured out a lot of these things.
And it was in that third round that most of the VCs here basically came in, right? I mean, not most,
a lot of the
the
VCs came in on the back of that third round.
So they waited quite some time as well, to their own detriment.
Yeah, some of them came in early, but a lot of them came in at that time.
Yeah. Okay, so what else would you, just to wrap up maybe on phase one, what else kind of characterizes phase one? Like how do you sum up that phase? It's 8 years, right? From 2012 to 2020 until the exit happened or was announced.
Yeah, look, maybe just to summarize, huge, a lot of passion to uplift the region on the back of Kareem's purpose. That was sort of the underlying thread that kept people going. Fight for our survival. There was a competitor that had a lot of money that we had to fight and make sure that we survive. Being super local, and local not at a regional level, but local in each of the countries and cities where we operated. In fact, I remember when we launched Careem in Saudi, some friends who were originally from Careem messaged me and said, you're talking the Careem language now, not the Riyadh language or the Saudi language. We were super, super local back then. And then fundraising. Every 12 months we were raising money. Every time we would raise money, we think this was enough for the next 10 years. But 2 years later, we thought we'd need to go back to the market and raise money.
Was there an element of like timing or luck that played a role, you think? Or was it pure, hard work, dedication and all of that?
When I was in grade 10, and I went to a missionary school in Pakistan.
Okay.
And every morning, the bishop of Karachi at that time would tell us a story. And I heard like thousands of stories growing up. But one day, just before the exams, he said, life is like a boat. On one end of the boat, or one of the oars of the boat, is your hard work. And the other oar of the boat is prayers, blessings, luck. You can call it whatever you want to call it, depending on your orientation. But he said, if you simply work hard and you don't have blessings, then you go in circle. And if you simply wait for the blessings to show up and you don't work hard, you also go in circles. So to move ahead in life, you need both hard work and blessings. So yes, we worked really, really hard. And I think everyone at Kareem gave their 500%. But we were, there were a lot of blessings, as we call them, in the first chapter of Kareem. We stumbled on an idea whose time had come, right? The ride-hailing, mobile, somehow it was the right time for that thing to happen. Women in Saudi were still not able to drive, and that became a huge source of growth in the early days of Kareem. Even though every time we were asked the question in fundraising or elsewhere, we always said, there are a lot of women taking Ubers in San Francisco and New York, and women can drive in those markets. So we're not worried about women driving, but that was a big problem that had to be solved, and Kareem came to the rescue to solve that problem. In fact, a lot of Saudi women back in the days talked about a pre-Kareem and a post-Kareem Saudi, which was very endearing to hear. So yes, timing was right. Many things happened for us just magically, which if they had not happened, we'd not be here. Yeah, it was just a combination of these two things. I think Sam Altman, who's now the founder of OpenAI, said something very interesting back in the day. He said, you have to believe that luck smiles equally at everyone. There's some people who are ready to take advantage of luck and some people who are not. And we were always the sort of more ambitious, crazy one, right? So we were looking for every opportunity to survive and get ahead. So I guess we probably took more advantage of opportunities that were showing up more than some others that might have not been as sort of fighting for survival.
So let's talk about phase 2.0, right? The acquisition, the post-acquisition, the teenager as an adult, right? The kind of the chaos of starting up and trying to figure things out should have been, in theory, more grounded. You know what you're doing. You're at scale at that point, right? So what were some of the characteristics of period 2.0?
So I guess the big thing that happened as a result of what we call chapter 2 or phase 2 is that the fight for survival has ended. Like that is no longer a thing now. In one way, but it was there in a different way. Because after acquisitions, as you know, many companies and many brands don't survive and things merge. So we had to make some effort to make sure that Kareem remains independent as its own brand, own culture. So that was a struggle, and we can talk more about this if you want. But then, fortunately or unfortunately, more unfortunately, COVID hit. And literally a few months after we closed the deal, business went down by 90%. We, of course, felt that if we didn't do anything, it'd be difficult to justify keeping Kareem alive in an environment
for
where,
Uber.
Yeah, in an environment where Uber, of course, also needs to focus on their profitability and their business is also down. So we took some very tough decisions to downsize the org and then start pivoting the business away from
30%, right? You downsized?
30% at that time, yeah. And then we pivoted the business from a ride-hailing business to start going after deliveries, which, as we know, was the need of the hour at that time. So food delivery we already had to some extent. We scaled that up, grocery delivery, service that we call Order Anything. A lot of delivery-related services came into the picture. So there was a business pivot that was happening while we were battling with COVID. And then there was a how do you operate Kareem pivot that is happening? Because now you're no longer a fully independent entrepreneurial thing anymore. You're part of a larger business that has a lot of systems, processes, compliance requirements. So the way that I look at chapter 2 is we pivoted the business from being a ride-hailing business to what we call now a super app or an everything app is the latest word that we use. And secondly, we grew up as an organization. We learned a lot from Uber on how to run a large global tech business. We have matured a lot of things in our finance processes, people processes, compliance procedures. So we've grown on that dimension. And now I feel and I believe that we're actually much better prepared for chapter 3 as a result of all the learnings that came in chapter 2 than we would have been otherwise.
Chapter 2 wasn't very long, right? And obviously, yeah, a big part of it was over COVID. And you're saying this is what kind of got you thinking about the super app, or was that part of your plan from before?
Yeah. The super app was an idea even before the pandemic hit. In fact, in 2018, we took a presentation to our board back then, basically saying, look, this region needs more services, more digital services. We have built one, and we're one of the first few that have happened on a mobile phone. And in the process of building it, we've also built a lot of the enabling infrastructure that you need to build consumer startups. We've built payment systems, we've built location systems, we've built call centers, we've built technology. And why would we not start adding other services to the same enabling infrastructure that we built for the ride-hailing business? So it made a ton of sense. But of course, the ride-hailing business, I mean, a core business that has needs and that is growing and that is being competed on, then you start focusing on the core business. But I think what the pandemic did was it just brought the point home that this needs to happen now, and that you should move away all the resources or majority of the resources that were working on ride hailing to now other businesses. And while it's easier said, but just putting that into practice in the context of an organization is not easy. So bit by bit, a lot of resources started getting pushed to the non-ride hailing side to actually bring the super app to life, to bring the delivery business to life, to bring the payments business to life as we see it today.
And you had full reign basically in operating this or in this pursuing this new venture or within your venture.
Uber has been a fantastic shareholder, parent company. They gave us a ton of autonomy. There were a few things that we worked very, very closely on, but outside of them, frankly, nothing changed. We were still operating like chapter one of Kareem, but under very different circumstances with a few more rules here and there than we had before.
Okay, so chapter two, if we have to summarize it, it's maybe better governance, stronger operations, right?
Yeah, better governance, more mature governance overall, and more mature way of running the business. A more complex business, because now we're running multiple verticals, multiple businesses in multiple markets. And that's a lot of complexity, right? You have one business like the ride-hailing business, you're running that business across 100 cities in the region. And that's one thing. And now layer on top of that a second business and a third business and a fourth business that also needs to run in multiple markets. The entire operating model of Kareem had to change. We're no longer, for example, organized like we were before, country by country. Now we're organized by verticals. We have a head of ride hailing, we have a head of food, we have a head of payments. And then within those businesses, we have the countries that look after that business in that market. And then we have shared services that support all of these verticals with common things. And there are many things that these verticals do on their own. So the operating model became very different and became more suited to the new reality of Kareem than the ride-hailing business that we were in chapter one. And that didn't happen right away. I think we have this thing called OM. First we had OM 1.0, then we had OM 2.2. Now we have...
What's OM?
So OM stands for operating model. And just like we have product versions, we have operating model versions as well, because we're trying something, this doesn't work, let's tweak it a little bit. Maybe someone should report into here, or this function should be in the vertical, this function should be in the shared service. So we keep iterating the way that we're organized to make sure that we can get the operating model right to be successful as an everything app in this region.
Okay.
So all of that happened in chapter two.
Okay. So now recently in April you announced a new spin-off, let's say, Careem Technologies. You've added another amazing partner, Etisalat, with $400 million. Not a small investment. Look at how things have changed, from like the 1.7 to now you have a new spin-off with 400 million. Great for the region, by the way. I mean, to see these, especially from a local player, right? This is not some Rakuten or someone coming in and putting in this money. But before we talk about like 3.0, can you just tell the audience like how big is Kareem today? Like how many verticals do you operate? Like how many countries are you in? What scale are you at this point?
So we operate in 10 countries, from Morocco to Pakistan, and most places in between. We have three major verticals, but then there is a lot of small businesses within them. We have, four major verticals. We have ride hailing, we have food delivery, grocery delivery, and we have payments. And then there are smaller verticals like we have Careem Bike that you see in Dubai that we're expanding to other parts of the region. We have a B2B delivery business called Careem Express. We have pharmacy delivery, flowers delivery and things of that sort.
Okay. Oh yeah.
But there are four big things, and there is a bunch of slightly smaller things that we do under what we are now calling Careem Labs. So, and then outside of that, we are 1,800, we're at a headcount of 1,800, and we're doing hundreds.
How many captains do you work with?
So there's about 500,000 captains are active.
Wow.
And of course, many more registered, but they go in and out from time to time, especially in places like Saudi, where a lot of part-timers are working as captains.
Okay. So it has a huge impact on the region today.
I think so. I think so.
You sure hope so, huh?
But that's more importantly, I think that's what keeps us going, right? Because in chapter 2, like we discussed, one of the big questions that kept coming up from the rank and file at Kareem and also people outside of Kareem is how longer are the founders still here? And there was a perception that these guys have an earn-out, and as soon as that earn-out is finished, they will leave. And we kept telling people that, look, this purpose of Kareem, remember, that we talked about in chapter 1, simplify the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. We are extremely early in this purpose. There are 500 million people that live between Morocco and Pakistan. And when the deal had happened, I think our monthly active users was 5 million. So out of the 500 million people, we're only simplifying the lives of 5 million on a monthly basis, which means that there is at least 100x more people that we should be helping. And even the people that we are helping, they're either going from point A to point B, or they're making a living on Kareem. But there's so many other things that people in the region need help with. So the point is, the purpose of Kareem was nowhere to be realized. And in that journey, we were just getting started, which is what led us to negotiate independence for Kareem in the deal that was done with Uber, which is what kept us at Kareem through chapter 2 and now chapter 3, because we do feel, for all the blessings that have happened, we feel a sense of responsibility to keep going and inshallah build an Amazon or Google type of institution from this region, because we believe that if we can build one, then there is a lot of value that we can create and overcome a lot of the shortcomings of our region, right? Whether these are political, economic systems not working in some of our countries, the fragmentation and so on and so forth. So we're quite excited about chapter 3 and the potential of chapter 3 to build that lasting institution from the region with local partners now on board as well.
Yeah, I think what I hear you say as well, that if you're a mission-driven founder, truly, then you will stick around and you'll keep building, right? I mean, you found a way, right? You could have, as you said, after the exit, you could have just relaxed. You and Magnus and Abdullah and the team, obviously. But you're sticking around and you're still reinventing the company, reinventing how things are done, and you're still committed to the purpose and the mission.
Because we live in Dubai, and Dubai has such a high quality of life, right? It's very easy to just live in Dubai and not realize that outside of Dubai, outside of UAE, outside of some parts of Saudi, life in the region is very hard, right?
Yes.
It's full of friction. Sometimes when I travel to some of these countries and ask myself, is life for people in this country better today than it was 12 years ago? And the answer is, I'm not sure, right? People are still struggling with a lot of basic things in life in places like Pakistan and Lebanon.
Lebanon, it's worse, actually.
Right? In many parts of the region, it's worse.
Yeah.
So then you've got to ask yourself, right? Like, this is the purpose of Kareem. The region is what gave us meaning, gave us purpose, gave us the drive. It still needs help. We are in a blessed position in the sense that we have built this platform which is there to be scaled up and do many more things for these people. We've had some financial success along the way as well. So that sort of thing is no longer something that we have to
you don't have an existential
worry
threat
about as
anymore.
well.
Yeah.
Now, every pitch that comes, we can shoot for a home run, right? And if we hit a few home runs, then this could mean a very different reality for the region. You know, we started this thing with me being in the Silicon Valley around the dot-com bubble. Like some of the largest companies in the world today were started in front of our eyes, right? Google was started in 99. We saw it happen, right? Amazon was started in 95. We saw it happen. In the last 20 years, they've created trillions of dollars of value.
Yeah.
Now, if we can replicate that in the region over the next 20 years, that impact will be larger than the current GDP of the region. So if they can do it in the last 20 years, why should we not aim to do it in the next 20 years for this region?
Absolutely.
And that's what keeps us going.
So you wrote a blog post about it on Careem's website about the 3.0, the opportunity, what it means for the team, for the region, etc. And there was something that you wrote which made me laugh when I was reading it. It was a little sentence at the end. That's how I'm going to quote you here. Let's celebrate for a little bit and then back to work. It's time to accelerate.
Right.
I just thought like it's very symbolic of the expectations that you have, like on yourself, on your team, your work ethic, and also the opportunity that you see that you're literally still starting, basically, which many people again in your position would think I'm at the finish line now. But now you're not a startup anymore, right? I mean, you had a post. I have to talk about it because you posted, why you shouldn't join Kareem on LinkedIn, and you mentioned some really funny things like, our offices are never going to be in Architectural Digest or whatever. And I also watched your story, the video that you've done with your co-founders, and you kept mentioning the word frugal, right? Like it's a frugal culture. But you don't have this like I'm a scrappy startup card, to play anymore. So so you have 90 openings today, right? I mean, how would you incentivize, or how would you convince people that come and join me, work really hard, and we could potentially be the Google of this region?
Magnus actually says it very interestingly, and he says that if you're looking for a job, Kareem is not the right place for you. If you're looking for a mission to join, then welcome. And people in the region and outside the region as well that can find some resonance to Kareem's purpose or mission to uplift the region, that is the primary purpose, right? We're not inviting people to join Kareem and be employees of Kareem. We're inviting people to become owners, co-owners of this mission with us. And in so many, one term that is used when we talk about mission, we're companions in this mission, right? Versus something else. So for the people whose mission, broadly speaking, align with Kareem's purpose, this is incredible. And for those people, yes, we still have to pay them decently well so that they can look after themselves and their families, but they'll have to just join this mission and make something big happen out of it. We still have to make sure that they have long-term upside in being a part of Kareem. We still have to make sure that they're not killing themselves while working at Kareem. But outside of that, it's really the achievement of the mission, achievement of the impact that we want to make on this region. That is the most exciting thing that people should join Kareem for. Everything else really fades in comparison. And I'll give you some examples. In chapter 1 of Kareem, we were scrappier than today. But I remember we had a salary cap of $150,000. We said we're not going to pay anyone more than $150,000. A lot of people that we wanted to hire were making a lot more than that. And frankly, there were some people that were extremely well qualified, but this artificial cap that we had put on ourselves kept those people from joining. But the people that walked in through that door, even though they were making 2-3 times that number, are still with Kareem today. Because they joined Kareem for the right reason. And they have the most passion, the most drive to make Kareem's mission come to life.
Yeah.
So if anything, we're hoping that that post that we put out keeps the people that are not aligned with this purpose and mission away, so that we can actually get the right people in who will be around with Kareem with a lot of passion for the next 10 to 20 years to come.
Yeah. No, I think people need to understand that it's not easy, right? I mean, you're I told you when you came in, you're scaling a unicorn, right? But you said it's kind of a new entity kind of thing, right? It's slightly separate. So you said you're not a unicorn yet. You're almost there, but it's I think it's a different cell, right? And I think now with your exit, I think people see potentially also the value of things like shares and equity and all of that, which I think maybe back in the day it was a much more difficult sell, right?
Yeah.
Like when you tell people you're going to have equity in the company and they tell you whatever.
Right. No, I think most people that are at somewhat senior levels, they see the value in them and they are willing to work with them. But at the more junior levels in our society, I think cash is still king.
Yeah.
You still have to compensate them.
Well,
competitively.
Dubai is an expensive place, I think.
Dubai is an
it doesn't
expensive
help.
place. Many people living in other parts of the region don't always have the same sort of projection on the future, because life around them is changing so quickly that the short term and what's available today is a lot more valuable than what's available tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they're not able to take the same level of risk mentally than some other people are. But yeah, shares have value. People have realized that. But frankly, we want people to join Kareem not for the shares of Kareem or for the salary of Kareem, but for the mission of Kareem, right? And if you feel that you're just after the shares, then that's also not great, right?
Yeah, I like what you said about the short-termism. I think it's an issue we have in the region in general. Is that it's I don't know if it's like the lack of civic education, where I have to take care of my things now, and I don't care what happens around me. Like you see it a lot. I mean, in countries like Lebanon, for example. Like with the garbage situation. Like as long as my street is clean, I don't care what's happening, in your street. And I think that maybe people don't see long term.
Yeah, and you can't blame them as well, because they've just grown up with a lot of variability around them, right? So it's hard to be able to project and put a lot of emphasis on long term when the short term is existential in so many ways. But one thing that I personally learned in working primarily at McKinsey first and then spending a lot of time at Magnus is that if you do the right thing, other things follow. If you focus on impact and building something that can uplift the lives of people in the region, you'll do well financially. But don't try to solve for
the money.
That, right? Like it's just going to happen naturally. And frankly, at some point in your life, an extra dollar is going to make you much less happy than other things anyways. So you might as well think a little bit long term and focus on impact, because that will follow and you'll get enough, and other things will become more important in life over time.
Yeah. So for those who are listening, what's the vision now? How are you going to grow? Is it more verticals, more markets? Like what's next?
Yeah, all of the above.
All the above, yeah. Okay.
Like I said, the aspiration is to build an Amazon or Google type of institution from this region of that scale. And as you know, the region is not as large as some of the countries in which those companies operate. So if you want to become that large, then we need as much TAM as possible, right? We need to be in all of the large countries in the region. We need to be doing as much as we can. But of course, we want to do it in a way that brings the entire ecosystem with us. So the vision that we have for the Everything app is that there are some things that Kareem will do. For example, things that are closely related to our logistics capability, whether it is ride hailing, deliveries, and so forth. But everything else, we will rely on third parties to build on the Kareem Everything app. So for example, there's a cleaning service on the Kareem app today that's powered by a third party. There's a rental car service, same. There's laundry service, same. And we want to make sure that we invest enough in that platform layer that allows that to happen at scale. So for example, if you go to Morocco, the Kareem app in Morocco has a lot of local services that have been built by Morocco for that population available on the Careem app.
Right, okay.
And we
So
give them
it's,
all the
it's-
enabling infrastructure to be successful, right?
Okay.
We have payment systems, we have logistics that we can offer them as capabilities.
So
that
when you
can-
open your app in Morocco, it's completely different set of services that you
services
see.
that make sense for that
Yeah,
market. When you
yeah.
open the app in Pakistan, the services that make sense for Pakistan. And what we're hoping it'll do is that that platform will inshallah make it easy
Mm-hmm.
for people to create services and grow those services.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the moment, if you want to create a new digital service, it's actually quite difficult, right? You have to build an app and you have to build sometimes logistics, sometimes payment
that
systems,
customer
sometimes
acquisition as
expand
well.
to different, grow the service.
Yeah.
But now we're basically telling people that, look, Kareem has expanded to all parts of the region and has built a lot of the things that you might need to be successful. Build it on the Kareem app. If you build on the Kareem app, you'll be able to not just take advantage of everything that Kareem has built to scale its services, but you'll also be able to attract customers that Kareem has. And then if you're ready to scale your services outside of that one country that you started in, you just turn on the switch and your services can operate in other parts of the region. A bit similar to how a startup in California can operate seamlessly in New York. But why does a startup in Casablanca cannot operate as seamlessly in Cairo that a California startup can operate in New York, right? So if you're built on the Kareem Super App, we're hoping that we can create that layer that'll make it much easier to build services that people need for their daily lives and to scale those services not just in that country but across the region, inshallah.
Okay. And is this, you don't plan to do acquisitions, right? These are independent startups that are coming in. It's like you're an iOS, basically.
Yeah, something similar. So we may do acquisitions in our core verticals, things that we are doing ourselves. There may be some acquisitions that make
Because
sense.
you've done some.
We have done some, but as you know, we have done those in our core things, right? Outside of the core, we may do some acquisitions in what we call the platform layer to sort of build the platform layer and the capability that the platform layer needs to provide. But as far as the services are concerned, we want to be a platform and not get into more things directly than we need to get into.
Okay. So to do that as well, so you want to build the next Google or Amazon from this region. I mean, these are $1 trillion companies, right? You need a lot of cash, right? A lot of liquidity. So how are you gonna do that?
We'll have to start making money,
Okay.
like it's been done by all other large businesses before us.
Oh, you're actually gonna generate revenue and profit and grow like that? Okay, that's great.
Look, we've learned a lot in the last 3 years, and I think the ride-hailing business is profitable in the region, and a lot of great learnings came from how that happened. And now the way that we run the business, that we want to grow the business, is in a sustainable, healthy way.
Okay.
So we have a near-term objective to break even as a group, and then beyond that, let's do things in a way that makes sense. We don't have to do all the things in all the markets simultaneously. Let's grow sequentially. Let's make the right bets with the profits that we make, and when we make more profits, we make more bets. When we make more bets, we make more bets.
Okay.
So we start growing a little bit more organically through our own resources beyond the money that we have just raised.
And is that because of what's happening now globally? Is that like what kind of caused it, or
it's a good reminder.
It's a business decision.
No, it's a good reminder.
Okay.
But alhamdulillah, as you know, the region is a bit counter-cyclical at the moment. So you could potentially raise more money from the region if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But we don't think at this stage in Kareem's journey, it's right not to be profitable. I think let's build a solid business, and let's make sure that we are forced to prioritize and forced to do the right things in a sustainable manner. Like if you look at companies like Google, Amazon that we use as an example, these companies became profitable in their first 5-6 years, and then they've basically grown on their profits. That's how all companies have done it in the past.
Yeah.
The last 15 years were just a little bit unusual, where capital was very cheap and somehow you could do 10 things simultaneously without anything becoming profitable. But I think we're back to the basics.
Yeah.
It's
but I don't think
worthwhile
we had that luxury that much in the region, to be honest. I mean,
not as much.
No, I mean,
but
money was always scarce here. It was
money
never
was scarce. But look, we were able to not be profitable for 8 years.
Yeah.
When we were acquired, we were not profitable.
Okay.
And 8 years is also a long time.
Yes.
So there was capital available
Yes.
to sustain that kind of unprofitable run. And frankly, I believe that you can still pull that off in the region. But I don't think that's the right answer for Kareem now.
Mm-hmm. And just there's a lot of talk today about AI and all of that stuff. Is that something that you think about?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
100%.
Do you see that as something disrupting or something that is enabling to Kareem?
Yeah. Look, it can be both, right? But our general view on this is a big opportunity, and in two main ways. One is, we have a lot of services on our everything app. If you open the Kareem app in Dubai, you'll see like 16, 17 services. And one of the biggest criticisms that we get from customers is, I don't even know what's on your app. There's so many things that are on the app. I don't know all of them. If ChatGPT and Google Bard can help you figure out what's available on the entire internet, we should be able to help you figure out through AI what's available on a small Kareem app. So we actually believe that AI can be a very powerful force in helping us predict what people need and give them those services even before they express their need on the app. So that's one big thing that we're super excited about. And the second thing that we're excited about is the unleashing of product development productivity. For the longest time, we've never had enough engineers, we've never had enough product managers, never had enough data scientists. And we are quite excited to use AI to actually increase our product development capacity that allows us to do more and more with our resources. So between these two things, we think it's a massive opportunity for this region.
So speaking of talent was always an issue here in the region, like the accessibility to talent that has done things at scale, right? That has been in a unicorn, etc. Do you think that problem is still there? What's your assessment of the talent market today?
Yeah. It's getting better. It's getting better in some areas, and it's still a problem in others. Where it's getting better is in the early to mid stage. I think there are a lot of people that have gone through the Kareem journey or the Souk journey or some other journeys. I think that talent is available. People know how to build products. People know how to take products to PMF. People know how to achieve some scale with those products. So that, I feel there's enough of that and more will happen. Where you still see a gap are people that can take companies from 1 to 100. There are not that many people in this region that have been through those journeys, and hence a lot of us are still making mistakes that we should not be making. But fortunately for the region, because of everything that's happening globally, a lot of that talent that is sitting outside of the region is now considering moving to the region for those opportunities. So alhamdulillah, I think that wave is starting to move in the right direction. We still don't have enough of those people. So inshallah, over the next couple of years, we'll get more of those people. And as the Kareems and the Amazons and the others of the world scale in the region and build that capability will start becoming available to the ecosystem in larger numbers. And hopefully that problem will get solved as well.
Okay. Are you investing in companies?
Yeah, I've been writing checks, and I should probably slow down a little bit.
Okay, so now everyone's coming to you.
No, not from that perspective. I think at some point it just becomes an admin overhead. And it's better to just invest through funds than to invest directly.
Yeah, no, but the reason why I asked that is because you struggle to raise funds initially, right? And there is the critique here of investors in this part of the world that they always want to invest in something that's proven, tested in some other market, etc. How is Mudassir as an investor? Are you taking more risks? Are you looking at new industries? What are you investing in?
So I'm less interested in financial returns when I'm investing and writing these checks, and more interested in supporting purpose-driven founders, build things that can sort of improve things for the people of the region. So my investment criteria is relatively simple. If you are a purpose-driven founder who's doing it for the right reasons, not to just make a ton of money for yourself and become rich and make your investors rich, but there's a deeper drive for something that's socially related, that's important for me. And second, you have to be capable. You're not going to build something amazing by just being purpose-driven. You also need to be super capable. You need to be willing to work really, really hard. You need to be able to make the sacrifices that are required for this journey. So if I see these two things in someone, then I'm more likely to write a check than if the business is exciting and if the growth is there, but I don't see these two things.
So you want to see yourself, a younger version of yourself.
But I think there is,
Hardworking, mission-driven.
Hardworking, vision-driven, fine. But
Yeah.
I think the region needs it, right? I think the region needs it.
I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
I feel that more and more actually, especially for countries like Lebanon, Pakistan, and many other countries in the region, where the economic and political systems are not working, there's actually a lot more pressure and burden on these entrepreneurs to do things that'll overcome these challenges and make something happen.
Yeah.
So we need to support these type of founders and make sure that they have all the resources, all the support they need to be successful, because they are the ticket to a better future for most of the region.
I think what you would find hard though is that the kind of the work ethic that you have, and the all-in mentality, right? That I'm gonna build this thing, I'm gonna give it my everything. I think people are a bit reluctant. That's my feeling anyway. In this part of the world.
There are people that are reluctant and there are people who are not, right? I think we support the people that are not. And if we support them, we'll see a lot more of them in the future. Yes. And then this will start changing, right?
Okay. So you inspire lots of people. You inspire me. I'm sure you inspire lots of people in your home country. People look up to you and what you were able to achieve here. Who inspires you?
It's probably cliched, but for the longest time, Elon Musk has been someone that I've really been inspired by. And again, for two reasons. One is, man, nothing is impossible, right? So that's
building spaceships.
Yeah, and you work backwards from challenges. And there's a big sort of purpose element behind many of the things that he's doing, right? He wants to make humans a multi-planetary species, and he needs to send people to Mars, and hence he needs to invest in SpaceX, and he needs to build battery technology that can enable all of that to happen. So I feel that the boldness around doing something that the humanity needs is extremely admirable.
Amazing. I hope you would do the same in this region.
We all have to collectively make something happen.
Thanks for coming, Mudassir.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Conversations with Loulou with Mudassir Sheikha. I hope you found it informative and inspiring. Don't forget to visit conversationswithloulou.com to check out all the other episodes. You can also reach out to me for feedback, for guest recommendations, and sponsorship requests on the show's website or on all social media platforms. You'll find me at the handle Loulou Khazan. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this podcast to get the latest episodes. And do give us a rating and a review. It does help in getting the show discovered. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you share it with your friends, family, colleagues, and whoever can benefit. I have one request from you, please. I have included the link to the podcast listener survey in the show's notes. Please spend 7 minutes on it. It would really help me in getting to know you, our listeners, and it will help me in planning for future episodes. Thank you so much and see you in a few weeks.